If you work with stained glass or crockery, then you're going to love this new product that's just been released into the marketplace. It's a new mini stained glass grinder. And when I heard about this product being in development, I just couldn't wait to get my hands on one to review it. So anyway, let's get in the video and have a look at it. Well, it's finally arrived and I'm really excited, so let's get into it. And I've got my little trusty blade here, making sure it's not too far out because I don't want to cut anything that's not supposed to be cut. Rip and tear, except this is plastic. And this has got a little check mark on it, which is good. So I'd say that's the way up. Yep, that's the right way up. Well, here's the MiniMaxi grinder, and these were the other contents that were with the grinder inside the box. We have a small packet of grease, which is very important because we need to apply a small amount of this grease onto the actual grinding spindle before we put on the grinding bit and before we begin using the MiniMaxi grinder. It's very easy to do, and I'm going to show you how to do that very shortly. It also comes with an Allen key and a spare fuse, and if you're wondering where to change the fuse, it's on this side, just underneath the on-off switch, and this on-off switch comes with a very durable protective cover as well. It also comes with your warranty certificate, and this gives you a full 12-month warranty on all parts except for the grinding bit, because that's a consumable item. So have a read through that when you buy your grinder, have a read through that before you begin using it. And also it comes with a set of instructions, and you need to read through those thoroughly before you begin using the MiniMaxi grinder. Now there are a couple of accessories which you can purchase separately for the MiniMaxi grinder, such as a protective face shield and also a larger 25mm grinding bit. Now the grinding bit that comes with the MiniMaxi grinder is a 16mm. Now always keep an eye out for any future accessories that could be added to the MiniMaxi grinder range. Now I'm just going to show you how to apply a little bit of grease to the grinding spindle, and I'm also going to show you a couple of other interesting things that will make using your MiniMaxi grinder easier. Now I've got my Allen key here, which came with the grinder, and I'm looking for a hole near the top of the grinding bit. Now in this particular case it's at the front here, but if you can't see yours, you may have to turn that grinding bit around till you do. Then I'm going to put the end of the Allen key into that hole, and you can use this end or this end here. It really doesn't matter, whatever makes it easier for you to use. So I'm going to use this end, and I'm just going to put it in the hole there, and you may have to turn it a little bit until it slots in, and then I'm just going to give that a little bit of a turn. One turn should be enough, you can do two if you need to. And I'm just going to remove the grinding head. Now I'm going to remove the plate, and that's easy, just remove the plate like that. Now one of the things that you will notice is that if you're using the larger grinding bit, it will not fit on this plate in its present form. So what you need to do is remove that center piece. So all I do is I get my finger in there and I just give that a push up like that. And then I put this somewhere safe along with the Allen key, because you don't want to lose either one of those. But because I'm using the smaller grinder bit, I'm just going to pop that right back in there and leave it. Now at this point in time, we can grease this shaft, but I'm going to show you something else. This plate also removes, and it's just a gentle movement like that, and this plate you can take outside and wash it out, because this is the reservoir, this is where the water goes, and this is where it gets bits of glass and things like that in there. So you can take this outside and wash it completely out, but do not wash it down your sink. Always wash it outside, and then when it's dry you can then put it back on to the MiniMaxi grinder. To actually apply a bit of grease to this, I'm just going to put my glove on. Now I've cut off the end of the plastic container that the grease is in. I think you can see that. And I've also got a plastic bag, a Ziploc bag standing by, because what I'm going to do is once I've used a little bit of grease out of this packet, I'm going to then pop it in this plastic bag and then just like that, and then reseal that up, and then that will keep for quite some time. So all I'm going to do now is just apply, and you don't have to use your finger, this is just what I do. I'm just going to apply a little bit of grease on my finger and then just put it on there like that. And what this does is it helps to get the grinding head off, and because it uses water, we don't want that grinding head to seize on. So you need to remove the grinding head reasonably regularly, because you don't want that grinding head to seize on. And because if it does seize on, it's going to make it quite difficult to get back off again. And in some cases, you won't be able to. That's about it. Glove off. Now that that grinding spindle is all greased, we can now go ahead and put the grinding head back onto it. Now we need to make sure, and this is very important, we need to make sure that this screw lines up with the flat side of this spindle. Now this spindle has one flat side and the rest of it is curved. So we just need to make sure we align this up and the screw goes onto the flat side. And all we do is we just put it over the top, line up the screw with that flat side, and then we then just put it on. And then when it's level with the top, we can then just put the Allen key in there and just nip it up firmly. Don't over tighten it, just firm. Now another option that you can do when you're putting the grinding head onto the spindle, you can lower it down further onto the spindle. And why you would want to do that is because you will be grinding from the top part of the grinding head. And then as that dulls down, you can then raise it up a little bit more to expose the new grinding area. And then as that dulls down, you can then raise it up a bit further. So what this does is it makes sure that you're actually getting more out of your grinding head. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do is line it up as we did before with the flat side, the screw with the flat side of the spindle. And when we do that, we just leave it up there. We put a piece of 3mm stained glass, 3mm stained glass underneath. We set the grinding head on top of that stained glass because we don't want it to hit the plastic bottom. And then we then do up the grinding head or the screw onto the flat side. We do that up firmly and remove the stained glass. So now if the cover was to go back on top, you're going to have less of the grinding bit exposed, but as it wears down, you can then raise it up to expose new grit, and then when that wears down, you raise it up again to expose new grit. So that's another option if you want to go down that path. But for the moment, I'm just going to leave it up at the top, just like that. Wipe that bit of grease off, and then I'm going to put the work cover back on. There you go. So what I've shown you is how to actually grease the spindle, how to remove the grinding bit and put it back on, how to remove the centerpiece out of here if you're going to be using the larger grinding head, and how to actually remove and clean the reservoir as well and to put it all back together again. So now we're good to go. Now I want to do a test using stained glass and crockery to see how it performs with the grinder. Now I've already started nipping into this container. It's here only to keep the shards, the stained glass shards and the crockery together in this container. And I've started nipping, and I'm just doing it kind of roughly, but the idea of the stained glass grinder is not so you use it to do all the heavy work. It's there to actually grind it and smooth the pieces down. So it's not there to sort of like, in this particular case, you wouldn't grind these down, these areas here. You really want to get those down a little bit further and then use the stained glass grinder just to tidy up that crockery. So I'm going to now use these nippers to just trim up the crockery a bit more. So if you do most of the work with your nippers, it will be a lot easier on the stained glass grinder, and also it's going to be quicker too. So now I've got all these ready to go. I'm now going to remove this and then get the stained glass grinder and fill it up with the water. Okay, I'm going to remove the top plate and I'm going to add the water into the reservoir. And now we're ready to go. So I'm going to turn it on. Gee, it's very quiet. It's just got a hum to it. Now you may notice here that there's water coming up, and I'll put the stained glass there so you can see it. Now with some grinders, they use a sponge. With this one, it doesn't. It has a reverse screw mechanism inside that draws the water up, which I think makes it a lot less messier. Okay, let's try this out and see how we go. And I'm not applying much pressure to the stained glass onto the grinding head. I'm just applying a bit of pressure, but the grinding head's doing the work. It's doing a lovely job actually. Now the more you nip your piece into shape with nippers, the less wear and tear it's going to have, the less wear and tear it's going to create on the grinding head. And of course the grinder as well. So you don't want the grinder to actually do the heavy lifting with shaping. You're really just using it for smoothing out the edges. And like I say, I'm not applying much pressure on this at all. There you go, that didn't take very long at all. Now let's try a piece of crockery and see how we go. Now with crockery, because it's uneven, I find that if you push down on it, it grabs onto the top plate here. Whereas if you push lightly, but towards the grinder head, you will find that it'll be easier to work. And again, we're not going to be pushing hard against the grinding bit because we really don't want to abuse the grinder. The more nipping you do, as I said earlier, with your nippers, the better it'll be for the grinding head because it'll create less wear and tear on it, and also for the grinder itself. It's doing a lovely job with the crockery as well. Well, there you go. I'll just turn the grinder off. So using crockery on the grinder bit is going to blunt it quicker than if you were to use it just for stained glass. So it may pay to actually have another grinder bit, one for stained glass and one for crockery. But anyway, I'll leave that decision up to you. Now, the other thing is that I find this splash guard works really well, and I find I don't need to add any other guard around this. However, I know that in the mosaic industry, we do tend to like to create our own splash guards if the grinder is kind of messy. But this one works really well because it doesn't use a sponge, so it works differently. And I find really there was hardly any water except in this area here. Now, if you were to build your own surround, it is advisable not to put it in an enclosed box because, and I've emptied the water out of this and I've cleaned it up, because at the bottom here are the vents. And inside these vents is all the electricals in there. So if you were to put this in a solid container, you may find that if you spill water in it or whatever the case may be, it may suck up the water and into the electrics. So my suggestion is if you're going to build a surround for this, make sure it's a surround and an outside surround and it doesn't enclose the bottom in any way, because you really don't want to have a situation where water gets inside a container that you've built and it gets sucked up into the electrics. So I just thought that was something worth pointing out to you. I really love the MiniMaxi grinder and the small footprint that it has. And although it has a small footprint, that doesn't mean that it's not a powerful grinder. Now, some of the highlights I really love about this grinder is that it's been specifically designed for the Australian marketplace, and that all the electrics inside have been wired to Australian standards, which I consider to be extremely important, and that's extremely important for the person using it as well. Now, it comes with a full 12-month parts and labour warranty, excluding the grinding head because that's a consumable. and there are service centres throughout Australia. Now, all the grinders are tested before they leave the factory, and that's another good thing to know about. I also love the fact that it also comes with the Inland brand, a brand that we've known and trusted for many years. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you've taken something away from it. If you have any comments, put them down in the bottom of the comments section of the YouTube channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Enjoy.